ॐ पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिः चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौ शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे अस्तु शान्तिः. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
I am going to sing a Bengali song. It represents Sri Krishna's word, and the gist of the song is that we must develop an intense longing for God and practice mindfulness and detachment. Here is the English translation of the song. Though I never hesitate in giving salvation, I hesitate indeed to grant pure love. Whoever wins pure love surpasses all. Such a person is adored by everyone and becomes successful at all times. Listen carefully. I shall tell you of love. Spiritual freedom a person may gain, but love for God is very rare. Only for pure love's sake did I become King Vali's gatekeeper. Only in Vrindavan can pure love be found. Its secret is known only to the Gopas and Gopis there. For pure love's sake, I stayed in Nanda's home. Taking him as my father, I carried his burden on my head. আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই, আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই, সুধা ভক্তি দিতে কাতর হই গো, আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই। আমার ভক্তি যে বা পায় তারে কে বা পায়, ভক্তি যে বা পায় তারে কে বা পায়, সে যে সেবা পায় হয়ে ত্রিলোক জয়ী, মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই। শুনো চন্দ্রাবলি ভক্তির কথা কই, মুক্তি মিলে কভু ভক্তি মিলে কই। শুনো চন্দ্রাবলি ভক্তির কথা কই, মুক্তি মিলে কভু ভক্তি মিলে কই। ভক্তির কারণে পাতাল ভাবনে, ভক্তির কারণে পাতাল ভাবনে, বলির দ্বারে আমি দাঁড়ি হয়ে রই, মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই। শুদ্ধা ভক্তি এক আছে বৃন্দাবনে, গোপ গোপী বিনে অন্যে নাহি জানে। শুদ্ধা ভক্তি এক আছে বৃন্দাবনে, গোপ গোপী বিনে অন্যে নাহি জানে। ভক্তির কারণে নন্দের ভাবনে, পিতা জ্ঞানে নন্দের বাধা মাত কথায় বই মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই সুধা ভক্তি দিতে কাতর হই গো আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই আমি মুক্তি দিতে কাতর নই
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Our subject today is the power of ignorance. We are aware of the importance of power to overcome obstacles in life. We know that oftentimes there are difficulties, there are challenges, and depending on the kind of challenges that we face, we need some power to overcome those challenges. When we speak about power, there are at least two ways we can understand where that power is located. So at least there are two ways. Either the power is located within ourselves, or the power is located in a certain position that we hold. The power that is located within oneself clearly is there is the muscle power, the physical power. In Sanskrit, that is sometimes called as Bahubalam. Bahu means really the arms, this thing. Or there is an intellectual power of the intellect, that is sometimes called Buddhi, Buddhi Balam. There is moral power. When we lead a strong ethical life, moral life, we get power, a life of dharma. That is sometimes called Niti Balam. So these are some of the examples of a power that is lodged within ourselves. Now some of these powers increase with age, and after a while they decrease with age. Clearly, as we grow up to a point, our physical strength, physical power increases, and then after that peak is reached, and then later it goes on decreasing. That's not necessarily true with the other kinds of power. So again, there is no definitive rule about it. Physical power, we can more or less be sure that with age it decreases. But about moral power, the power of the intellect, that doesn't necessarily, in fact, hopefully, it should keep on increasing all the time. The second place where the power can be located is in a certain position that we hold in life. For instance, when someone becomes the president of a corporation or the president of the country. So there are certain powers invested in a position. And as long as we hold that position, we are in possession of that power. So then when we now come to ignorance as power, what we first need to ask is, first of all, is it a power? can ignorance be considered a power is itself a very interesting question. And that depends on how we understand ignorance. What is ignorance? If we understand ignorance to be merely absence of knowledge, then it really cannot have any power. Because merely absence of something, whose power are we talking of? Power of the absence doesn't make sense. So if something or some entity has to have a power, it must have a positive existence. So if knowledge has to have power, we cannot understand it merely in terms of absence of knowledge. In Vedanta, ignorance is recognized as a positive entity. It's not merely absence of knowledge. And because it is a positive entity, it has power. Where is this power located? Again, it's not due to some position we hold in life. So the power of ignorance, according to Vedantic understanding, is lodged within ourselves. And how does? Clearly, every time there is some kind of power, it manifests in some form, in some way. In which way is the power of ignorance manifested in our lives? And it's possible to say that it is manifested in two ways. First way is that it hides the truth, hides the reality. And this power of ignorance to hide the truth is in Sanskrit sometimes called avarana shakti. Shakti means power. Avarana means hiding, veiling. So that's one power. And the second power, doesn't simply hide the truth or hide the reality, but it also projects in its place a pseudo-truth, something else which appears to be the truth. So that power to project something else is called in Sanskrit Vikshepa Shakti. And the classical example that we often give, with which most of you are familiar, is a coiled rope in a semi-lit room, which is mistaken for a snake. So now the truth there is it's a rope. Because the room is semi-lit, there is not sufficient light. I'm ignorant of the fact that it's rope. So my ignorance of that object, first of all, hides the reality that it's a rope, but doesn't simply hide it. It also projects in its place something else, a snake. And it's not simply a snake in my mind. I see a snake right in front of me. And that's why I say, oh my God, there is a snake here. Now the snake is not really real. It's only a rope that is being mistaken for a snake. And so the snake has a kind of a pseudo-reality. But when I see a snake, I don't think that it's a pseudo-reality. To me, it appears as a real. So that's what ignorance does. Just as in that example, the ignorance of a rope hides the fact that it's a rope, and in its place projects the reality of a snake. Something like that is happening with our own lives. Even without even going to any high philosophy about it, just we as we are now. Our ignorance about ourselves, and I'm not using the word self here in any big spiritual sense, it's just we as we are right now. Our ignorance, and what does knowledge of ourselves here would mean? A knowledge of ourselves here would mean a knowledge of our strengths, our weaknesses, who we are as persons, who we are and what we are. Now, if we are ignorant, if we do not know our strengths, our weaknesses, then it becomes a big obstacle to leading an authentic life. So not only then, what happens is this: if we don't know ourselves as a person, then in its place, we project a different personality. And that becomes an obstacle, really. It's like this. All of us have some kind of an ideal person in mind. It sometimes may not be very clearly defined, but we have an ideal, like this is the kind of person I would like to be. And if we do not have a realistic assessment of who we are at this moment, it's very tempting to feel that I'm already the idealized person I want to be. You see, it's like it's a little bit like when we go for a walk for hunger, for instance. We all know we have to go for 20 miles. And suppose we kind of try to not think about those 20 miles, and then someone keeps telling, oh, just go a little bit ahead. You are almost there. I'm almost there. But that doesn't hide the fact that you still have 20 miles to walk. So sometimes the ideal that we have before us may seem so far, so distant, sometimes so unachievable, that we might want to say, I'm almost there, which can be a good motivation in some case, but it also hides the fact that even if I think I'm almost there, if I'm not there, I'm not there. And so in order for us to lead a truly authentic life, we have to have a realistic assessment of where we stand. And sometimes it may not be very pleasant. The reason we want to escape from ourselves is that looking at ourselves may not be a very pleasant task. It's like this. If my room is in a terrible mess and I'm too lazy to keep it clean, then I will try to spend as much time as possible outside my room, because it's not a pleasant place to be in. Because cleaning up my room needs work. It's more or less the same way. When I look in my heart, and if there is a lot of mess in it, and then I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time thinking within. Then I will try to spend a lot of time thinking about others, thinking about the world, looking at other people, not because I'm particularly interested in them, but it's just that looking within is not a very pleasant occupation. And so in order for us to have a realistic understanding, we need to be strong. We need to look within, no matter how unpleasant things we might discover. With that, we will be able to overcome the danger of cultivating either of these complexes, either a superiority complex or an inferiority complex. We just have to be who we are. We don't have to feel more superior than who we are, nor do we need to feel more inferior than who we are, because no matter what we feel, we just are who we are. It's like the story that I sometimes like to say. A person thought that he was suffering from an inferiority complex, so he went for a personality assessment. And then after the assessment was done, the therapist said, I have good news for you. You're not suffering from an inferiority complex. You are inferior. Which is actually good to know, because if I know I'm inferior, then there is no complex, and I can try to better myself. And so we don't need any of the complexes. We just need and that's not so easy. I mean, it's not so easy to be objective in assessing other people either. There is lots of prejudices, biases do come when we try to assess other people, to judge other people. It becomes even more difficult to judge our own selves. Oftentimes, people who are very hard on others are pretty soft on themselves. And so what we need is just brutal honesty with oneself. We don't have to go the other extreme of to be so humble and so modest as to say, I'm worthless. No, none of us is worthless. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. So we need a realistic understanding to lead an authentic life. We have also heard the saying, ignorance is bliss. And that's really true. That's true with regard to things we need not know. Sometimes knowing too many things, and things which are really don't concern us, rather than being a joy, can be in fact a very big hurdle, can be a big obstacle. And so keeping things that we need not know and remaining ignorant about them is bliss. So ignorance is bliss kind of makes sense. But it's not bliss. It's in fact a curse with regard to things that we must know. So if I do not know what I must know, then it's not a bliss anymore. It's like suppose and there is a fire in a basement. Then that's the thing that person in that house must know. And if I'm ignorant of the fact that there is fire in my basement, then I can be in bliss in my room thinking, such a beautiful spring morning, but that bliss won't last too long. And so there are things we must know, and not knowing them, it's no longer a bliss. It's in fact terrible. So I began by saying that power is needed to overcome obstacles. Now that statement needs to be modified, because at that time we did not dwell too much that ignorance itself might be a power. And ignorance does not remove any obstacles. It in fact creates obstacles. Ignorance creates problems. And the greatest problem that ignorance has created is a problem that all of us face daily in our lives. Now, the problems that we face in our daily life, again, can be divided into at least two major types. The first type of problem that we experience is context-driven. That is, it is dependent on time, place, causality, cause and effect relationship. The problem of hunger, homelessness, poverty, violence. Most of you are aware of that terrible incident that occurred yesterday in a student of University of California, Santa Barbara. 6 people are dead, several are injured. And that's a very real problem, the problem of violence. And the other problems as well. Now, all of these problems are context-driven. They occur in a certain place, at a certain time, and we usually can trace the cause to a specific thing. And they can also then be remedied or minimized in some way. So those are one kind of problems. And a second kind of problem is what I would call existential. By that I mean problems which are bound with our very existence as living beings. They don't depend on any specific place, time, or causality. If you are a living being, you are tied up with those problems, no escape. And that is clearly the problem of sickness, aging, death, stress, anxiety, fear. No one seems completely free from any of these. And therefore, these problems need to be distinguished from those other problems that I mentioned earlier. So the first kind of problems are caused by various factors, and ignorance is only one of them. But the second kind of problem, the existential problem, the problem associated with our very existence as human beings, is caused exclusively by ignorance. The ignorance of who we really are. And the two powers of ignorance that I mentioned, the power to hide reality and the power to project something else in its place, are very active. According to Vedanta, the ignorance involved here, the existential ignorance, hides the fact that we are in fact pure, free, immortal, divine. So that truth, that we are our real nature, we are infinite, pure, and divine, that is hidden by that ignorance. And in its place, a different personality is projected. A new personality which is human, which is mortal, which is constrained by many limitations. So two things. Ignorance has hidden the fact that I'm who I am, and in its place has projected someone else. Now, the operation of these two powers, the power to hide and the power to project, can be seen in our daily experience of sleep, for instance. Now what happens? What exactly, something that we all experience daily, we sleep and we dream. Now when we sleep, our waking personality, I as a person who I am right now, that person is hidden, that person gets covered. So sleep can be seen as an ignorance of my waking personality, and consequently ignorance of the world vanishes when I sleep. I cannot be simultaneously aware of the world and then go to sleep, even if you sleep with open eyes. Some people do, but still my waking personality and the world I become completely ignorant of when I'm asleep. Not just that, and when I dream, in its place, a different personality is projected, my dream personality. And my dream persona may not always be identical with my waking persona. Sometimes people have reported growing wings in their dream and flying, or maybe flying on a, and after the Harry Potter series came, many people dreamt that they were sitting on dragons and flying. Now all of that dream persona is very different. It looks different, it has powers which the waking persona doesn't have. And consequently, the dream world is also different. So my waking personality encounters the world that we see. My dream personality encounters a dream world. There may be some similarities, but it's still a different world. This also then should make us think whether the world that we see and live and work in has an existence independent of me. Because the world changes when I change. When I sleep and dream, I'm in a dream world. When I wake up, then I'm in the waking world. So again, that's a whole different subject about the relationship between the perceiver and the perceived. The one who is seeing the world and the world itself. This is also something that we can verify from our own experience. Although apparently every day we live in the same world, apparently I say that because we have all seen that how the world around us is so related to how our mood is. Sometimes when we are in a very good mood and everything is peaceful and wonderful and no worries, and the world appears to be such a terrific place. It's a great place. It's so wonderful. And there are times in life when something goes horribly wrong, when we are betrayed or there are any kind of any number of ways when things can go wrong. The same world which just the other day looked so wonderful looks terrible. If you had a chance to look at the video of that young student, the young man who did all the massacre yesterday in Santa Barbara, and that's been now yanked off to YouTube. But if you were able to see it, and then you begin to wonder. I mean, it's a big rant from 6, 7, 8 minutes about this is how the world is, and now there will be retribution. And then you begin to wonder, was this young man and are we living in the same world? Because we look at the world around so differently from how he did, and not just he. Again, all of us, we will see that our understanding and perception of the world changes as and when we change. The world we saw when we were little children and the world when we saw as grown-ups, again, there is difference. The world we saw yesterday when things were good and the world we see today when things are bad is different. And therefore, we understand the importance of seeing things subjectively. If the world is dependent on my mood, if the world is dependent on who I am, how I am, then it's a very helpful practice to look at things in a subjective way. Swami Vivekananda once called it He said it's an Indian principle of looking subjectively for the cause of the objective. And in an 1896 letter he wrote to Goodwin. Goodwin was the English gentleman, the British gentleman who is a stenographer who took down most of Swami Vivekananda's lectures, which we find in the 9 volumes of his complete works. So in a letter that Swami Vivekananda wrote to him in 1896, he elaborated on this principle. What he said was this: we Vedantists in every difficulty ought to ask the subjective question, why do I see that? Why can I not conquer this with love? So that's how an objective way of looking at it in a subjective way would be. An objective way would be, why is this person behaving in this way? Why are things the way they are? That's an objective way, looking upon objects. A subjective way would be, why am I seeing it that way? And in order for us to learn and practice the subjective way, we need to recognize that the subject and object are connected, are interlinked. When the subject changes, the object changes also. We see that also when we look at the experience of these mystics. When you look at, for instance, in Ramakrishna's conversations, and sometimes we see him saying, the world is a play of the Divine Mother. It's all filled with divine. We read in many mystical writings how is the presence of the divine everywhere. And we say, wow, presence of the divine everywhere? Most of us don't see divine anywhere. So how does it happen? Are we then all living in the same world? And then it's reflecting on experiences of people like this, then we begin to see that there is some connection between the world and the one who sees the world. It is this power of ignorance which covers the knowledge of who we are and consequently of the world in which we live that creates havoc in our daily lives. Often we don't even know why we do what we do. This power of ignorance has mesmerized us, hypnotized us so much that we don't even know that we are under its control. So it's bad enough to be suffering, but it's worse if we don't even know that we are suffering and we are being consumed by it at the same time. So it's bad enough. It's like this. We might say ignorance is bliss, what I referred to before. But if there is fire in my basement, I need to know there is fire because then I can do something about it. If I don't know, then my not knowing it is actually doing me a great harm. So this power of ignorance, it's so difficult sometimes to know about it unless we make a conscious effort to think about our existence, because it's a kind of a default situation. We have been experiencing it right from the time we came into this life. So it's not like we think, oh, there was a time when it didn't exist, then I might be able to compare. But if it's something that we have always experienced, that's the kind of a default way we are never going to know we are in it. It's like a fish which is underwater. Unless the fish has jumped out of the water, leapt out and seen that there is a world beyond the body of the water, the fish won't even know that there is a world apart from the lake or the river or the ocean, wherever the fish is. So that's our situation. Luckily for us, there have been people who have seen the reality beyond this default situation that we all are in. And it's the report that they bring us, the knowledge, the insight that they bring us, that we have an opportunity then to reflect, to think, and then understand. Even if we don't experience that highest truth right away, at least intellectually, it's possible to grasp, to however little an extent, the relationship between me and the world in which I live and the constraints, the limitations under which I live. So ignorance, therefore, is bliss only up to a point. After a while, the bliss begins to look like a nightmare, but only when we think. There are people who can blissfully remain ignorant and not even know about it. And that's what in Vedanta we speak about the circle of relative existence. It's in Sanskrit, they call it samsara chakra. So it's possible to go round and round and round and not even know about it until what appeared to be a kind of a merry-go-round then becomes a sorrow-go-round. Then we say, oh, then it's no more fun. Then we want to say, is there a way to get out of it? But if we don't feel that sorrow yet, we might say, what's all this talk about freedom? It just doesn't make sense to me. And therefore, Vedanta doesn't really push this idea on anyone. It just says, well, if it doesn't make sense to you now, let's wait for a while until it begins to make sense. I mean, what else can you do? So how does this ignorance work in our daily life? The word that is often used for this kind of an ignorance which has enveloped our life from birth to death, and not just my life, it's the lives of everyone. Everyone in the universe seems to be affected by it. So therefore, sometimes this ignorance is seen as a cosmic ignorance. And the word that is often used for this ignorance is Maya. Now, I can do no better than quote Swami Vivekananda's words on the subject. So what I hope to do in the next few minutes is just read to you Swami Vivekananda's words of what this power of ignorance, this not knowing who we are, that our real nature is hidden and in its place a different persona is projected. What and how does it manifest in my life? So these are Vivekananda's words about it. I'm quoting from that great book of his called Jnana Yoga, in which he has 3 very brilliant talks on the power of ignorance, on Maya. So this is from that. There is the tremendous fact of death. The whole world is going towards death. Everything dies. All our progress, our vanities, our reforms, our luxuries, our wealth, our knowledge have that one end, death. That is all that is certain. Cities come and go, empires rise and fall, planets break into pieces and crumble into dust to be blown about by the atmospheres of other planets. Thus it has been going on from time without beginning. Death is the end of everything. Death is the end of life, of beauty, of wealth, of power, of virtue too. Saints die and sinners die. Kings die and beggars die. They are all going to death. And yet, this tremendous clinging on life exists. Somehow, we do not know why, we cling to life. We cannot give it up. And this is Maya. The mother is nursing a child with great care. All her soul, her life is in that child. The child grows, becomes a man, and perchance becomes a blackguard and a brute, kicks her and beats her every day, and yet the mother clings to the child. And when her reason awakes, she covers it up with the idea of love. She little thinks that it is not love, that it is something which has got hold of her nerves, which she cannot shake off. However she may try, she cannot shake off the bondage she is in, and this is Maya. We are all after the golden fleece. Every one of us thinks that this will be his. Every reasonable person sees that his chance, perhaps, is 1 in 20 million, and yet everyone struggles for it. And this is Maya. Death is stalking day and night over the earth of ours, but at the same time we think we shall live eternally. A question was once asked of King Yudhishthir, "What is the most wonderful thing on this earth?" And the king replied, "Every day people are dying around us, and yet we think we will never die." This is Maya. Trailing clouds of glory we come, says the poet. Not all of us come as trailing clouds of glory, however. Some of us come as trailing black fogs. There can be no question about that. But every one of us comes into this world to fight, as on a battlefield. We come here weeping to fight our way as well as we can, and to make a path for ourselves through this infinite ocean of life. Forward we go, having long ages behind us and an immense expanse beyond. So on we go till death comes and takes us off the field. Victorious or defeated, we do not know. And this is Maya. Hope is dominant in the heart of childhood. The whole world is a golden vision to the opening eyes of the child. He thinks his will is supreme. As he moves onward, at every step, nature stands as an adamantine wall, barring his future progress. He may hurl himself against it again and again, striving to break through. The further he goes, the further recedes the ideal, till death comes and there is release, perhaps, and this is Maya. A man of science rises. He is thirsting after knowledge. No sacrifice is too great, no struggle too hopeless for him. He moves onward, discovering secret after secret of nature, searching out the secrets from her innermost heart. And what for? What is it all for? Why should we give him glory? Why should he acquire fame? Doesn't nature do infinitely more than any human being can do? And nature is dull, insentient. Why should it be glory to imitate the dull, the insentient? Nature can hurl a thunderbolt of any magnitude to any distance. If a man can do one small part as much, we praise him and laud him to the skies. Why? Why should we praise him for imitating nature, imitating death, imitating dullness, imitating insentience? The force of gravitation can pull to pieces the biggest mass that ever existed, yet it is insentient. What glory is there in imitating the insentient? Yet we are all struggling after that, and this is Maya. The senses drag the human soul out. Man is seeking for pleasure and for happiness where it can never be found. For countless ages, we are all taught that this is futile and vain. There is no happiness here, but we cannot learn. It is impossible for us to do so, except through our own experience. We try them and a blow comes. Do we learn then? Not even then. Like moths hurling themselves against the flame, we are hurling ourselves again and again into sense pleasures, hoping to find satisfaction there. We return again and again with freshened energy. Thus we go on till crippled and cheated we die. And this is Maya. So with our intellect, in our desire to solve the mysteries of the universe, we cannot stop our questioning. We feel we must know and cannot believe that no knowledge is to be gained. A few steps, and there arises the wall of beginningless and endless time which we cannot surmount. A few steps, and there appears a wall of boundless space which we cannot surmount. And the whole is irrevocably bound in by the walls of cause and effect. We cannot go beyond them. Yet we struggle and still have to struggle. And this is Maya. With every breath, with every pulsation of the heart, with every one of our movements, we think we are free. And with every moment, we are shown that we are not. Bound slaves, nature's bond slaves, in body and mind, in all our thoughts, in all our feelings. And this is Maya. There was never a mother who did not think her child was a born genius, the most extraordinary child that was ever born. She dotes upon her child. The child grows up perhaps, becomes a drunkard, a brute, ill-treats the mother, and the more he ill-treats her, the more her love increases. The world lauds it as the unselfish love of the mother, little dreaming that the mother is a born slave. She cannot help it. She would 1,000 times rather throw off the burden, but she cannot. So she covers it with a mass of flowers, which she calls wonderful love. And this is Maya. In one form or another, we are all in it. It is the most difficult and intricate state of things to understand. It has been preached in every country, taught everywhere, but only believed by a few. Because until we get the experiences ourselves, we cannot believe in it. What does it show? Something very terrible. For it is all futile. Time, the avenger of everything, comes and nothing is left. He swallows up the saint and the sinner, the king and the peasant, the beautiful and the ugly. He leaves nothing. Everything is rushing towards that one goal, destruction. Our knowledge, our arts, our sciences, everything is rushing towards it. None can stem the tide. None can hold it back for a minute. We may try to forget it in the same way that persons in a plague-stricken city try to create oblivion by drinking, dancing, and other vain attempts, and so becoming paralyzed. So we are trying to forget, trying to create oblivion by all sorts of sense pleasures. And this is Maya. Not a very pretty picture. And we might think that this really presents a very kind of a pessimistic, dark view of life. And as I said, if we are frightened by the bluntness of the observations made here, we have a choice. We say, we either reject it, like this is only a one-sided way of thinking, or we look at it deeply and say, well, maybe it's not a very pretty picture, but maybe there is some truth in it. We begin then to see how ignorance, what mischief it is playing in our lives. How it is playing with us like a cat plays with a mouse, knowing that he can eat it at will. The good news is that this power can be overcome. If there was no way out, then it would be terrible. Then it would say, well, if there is no way out, then why think about it? But the good news is that there is a way. The power of ignorance can be overcome by the power of knowledge. How to develop knowledge, how to use it effectively to overcome Maya will be our topic in a future satsang. So I don't want to leave you with a kind of a depressing thing like, oh my God, the power of ignorance. It's really, Vivekananda's words are very, very powerful. I said in the beginning, so just one small thought before we close, that ignorance is not merely absence of knowledge, because absence of something cannot create an absent entity cannot create a positive effect. So I said ignorance is there. But, and here is I won't go into details right now. The point is this: if the ignorance is really there, then it can never go away. But what if it is apparently there? Then it can go away. It's like the example that, again, let's go back to the rope and the snake. If the snake were really there, then merely knowledge of it will not make the snake go away. But the fact that my knowledge of the rope makes the snake go away shows that even if the snake appears to be there, as long as I don't know the snake is kind of there, the snake is not really there. So when I know the rope to be a rope, the snake vanishes. When I wake up in the morning, my dream world and my dream persona vanishes. So I'm not stuck in my dream forever. All that I need to do is wake up. Exactly in the same way, if I use the power of knowledge to know who I really am, then this ignorance, which had covered my true identity, and in its place projected a false identity, that ignorance will vanish. Just as the dream world vanishes when I wake up, all of this power of Maya will completely disappear when I know who I truly am. So the power of ignorance has to be counteracted, not with guns and sticks. That's not the way you destroy ignorance, because every entity can be destroyed only in a specific way. Ignorance cannot be destroyed through any material weapons. The only way to destroy ignorance is through knowledge. And so, as I said, in a future satsang, we will focus on the power of knowledge and how it will overcome ignorance. So I leave you with the power of ignorance right now. It was like a person, there was I don't know, but this probably was only just a joke. There was a TV show in which he said how to swallow a sword and take it out. A demonstration of how one can do it, and everyone will be able to do it. It's very easy to do. And so then the demonstration started. So this person who was giving the training, he said, so everyone is now sitting there and get a sword, and how you can just put it in your mouth. And then once it is gone in, and they said, the next episode will be shown next week, how to remove it. So the good news is that the power of ignorance is not something that was interjected in us right now after hearing about it. It's always been there. So nothing new has happened, except that we have become aware of it, that's all. In the meantime, I would encourage you don't have to wait until the next lecture on power of knowledge to satisfy your curiosity, if you have it. I would suggest that if you haven't already read it, please read Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. It's already, if you have his complete works, it's there in the second volume of his complete works. Or there is also a separate book called Jnana Yoga. It's something that I would strongly recommend if to understand how ignorance functions and how knowledge can overcome it. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down, Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, again and again. Our subject next Sunday will be spiritual, not religious. This is one of the very increasing category in the world, and specifically in North America, how more and more people, especially of the younger generation, identify when they are asked about their religious preferences. And that often I have seen on campuses that most of them like to think of themselves as spiritual but not religious. So we will reflect a little bit on that next Sunday. On Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita at 7:30. And on Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. So you're welcome for all of these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being become manifest unto us. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May the Divine bless us all and fill our hearts with infinite grace and love. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.